And a good week to everyone out there. Jeff Siegel, Jeremy Plonk, joining you for our weekly recap of all things horse racing. It's official. Our podcast will take on 5 hot topics each and every Tuesday. Jeff, this week it's a changing of the guard from Del Mar to Los Alamitos, from Saratoga. Naira's back this week, but we changed venues to the Belmont at Aqueduct meet. In Kentucky, we have said goodbye to Kentucky Downs, and we say hello this week to Churchill Downs. And of course, it's Woodbine Mile week, so a lot going on. We've got a lot to recap as well.
Yeah, for me, it's a breather with Del Mar finishing up, and then Santa Anita coming around, but not for a couple more weeks. Mm-hmm. So we'll be looking around and trying to find some nuggets. And of course, he mentioned the Woodbine Mile, which could have a major impact on the Breeders' Cup. A mile on grass. We'll see what happens there. Always got to look out for some big efforts from Europe, even though they're not really on our list. I don't follow the stakes schedule that close. I just kind of open up Racing Post, and if there's a name in the headline, I'll watch the race. That's how that works. But from a gambling standpoint, it's still all there, and always love to play Woodbine. So I'll be looking at those races for sure this weekend.
There are a couple of races running Europe and Ireland over the next couple of days. Actually, they're going to be winning you're in for races around the first family. We've got a winning you're in towards the Eddie D Turf Sprint coming up in just a few weeks' time at Santa Anita. And then another winning you're in that'll get fillies and mares towards next year's Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf at Gulfstream Park in January. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on the international scene as well. We're going to talk some international things here over the next 30 minutes or so as we get geared up towards the Breeders' Cup. Let's talk our first of 5 topics this week on the big board. And have we found the fastest horse in the world? Well, through 3 starts this year, nobody's been able to lay a glove on Cogburn, and that continued in the Kentucky Downs Turf Sprint.
And right up there, too, is No Balls, who comes up alongside of them. It is Cogburn to catch, 3/16 to go. No Balls on the outside, moves up into second. Charcoal is down toward the inside, but Cogburn is opened up. Cogburn is opened up by 3. Then No Balls in second, one-timer, and Charcoal on the inside. No doubt about it. It is Cogburn. Cogburn scores by 4. Kadam rallied late for second. Axthelm looked like he got third outside of No Balls.
Steve Asmussen's known to have some really good sprinters, right? In recent years, Matoli, Jackie's Warrior, Yalpon, those kind. But on the turf, maybe not so much. And this year, Cogburn has moved to the grass. He was a pretty good dirt sprinter, Jeff, but he's been otherworldly since moving to the grass.
And you look at his pedigree and you figure, okay, that must be not this time. Giants Causeway horse, who's a good dirt horse, but you never know what you're going to get. Cogburn was basically a dirt horse. I remember making a rather substantial wager on him in the Chick Lang at Pimlico back in 22 and got beat that day. And I still can't figure out how he managed to do that. At that stage, I figured he's a nice horse, but he's never going to be like a great horse. Guess what? He is a world-class horse now, and it's all come basically this year. He won the first 2 starts this year with authority with a 111 Beyer number in his most recent start, the Jaipur at Saratoga, and he comes back. And I was a little, concerned about, his previous race on this tricky course was not that great, but he's so much better now than he's ever been, and he may very well be the shortest price favorite on Breeders' Cup Day in the 5-furlong turf sprint because he's very fast. He gives you a second move and a third move. And, he'll avoid trouble if he leaves from the gate, which he usually does. He's just, as a 5-year-old, he is just fantastic.
Sometimes when there's a great American on the turf, that will dissuade horses from overseas coming over who are also top-notch. It's rare that we have them for the longer races, but when there's a Wise Dan and a horse like that, sometimes the mile doesn't get the best horses from Europe to come over. I would think his presence, Cogburn, in the turf sprint is going to dissuade some of the better European turf sprinters, but it is a lot of money. You don't get to run for 7 figures as a turf sprinter very often, so we will see who shows up to take on Cogburn. You mentioned maybe he'll be the shortest price amongst all the favorites on Breeders' Cup Day. That got me thinking. So we went and checked the oddschecker.com website this morning. So these are updated odds that they're offering right now on futures overseas for the Breeders' Cup. The heaviest favorites. Now they are offering right now 9 divisions where they're offering advanced wagering, or I should say, futures wagering, anti-post as they call it, overseas. Torpedo Anna is the strongest favorite of of all at 13-8 in the Distaff division. Cogburn, as you mentioned, could go as the highest, lowest price favorite, the heaviest favorite in the Breeders' Cup. He is right now at 9-4, the second lowest favorite amongst the divisions being offered. Sweet Azteca in the Filly and Mare Sprint, City of Troy in the Classic, and down through the ranks. A couple horses, like Calandigan, who may or may not come over for the Breeders' Cup. Of course, that horse for the Aga Khan was a winner at Royal Ascot, and Calandigan taking the King Edward. Will he come over or head, to a more international type race later in the year? Something like the Melbourne Cup, we shall see. But that may be why the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Turf right now is being offered at 6-1, because of the uncertainty of how that division might shake out. What say you, Jeff? Is Cogburn, Torpedo Anna, which one of those is the strongest in their division?
Yeah, I would probably be tempted to go with Cogburn as my most logical winner. For as good as Torpedo Anna is, I mean, she had a very hard race last time out. She's going to come over here and run at Del Mar, which shouldn't be an issue. Other than I'm going to assume that Adara Manor will be at her best. And right now on numbers, there's not that much difference. Whereas Cogburn seems like he's taking care of everybody over on this side of the pond. And he also beat the Royal Ascot winner in Kadim rather convincingly in the race we just saw at Kentucky Downs. So I'm just not sure where the competition is going to come from for Cogburn. And he's so fast and consistent. And I mean, 9-4, if you assume that the luck will be on your side and he won't stub his toe between now and then, I don't think you're going to get 9-4 on Breeders' Cup Day on the tote. I just think that he's just so thoroughly good and consistent and only can beat himself as far as I can see.
Yeah, and amongst the Americans, there doesn't seem to be anybody who can come close to him. I wonder what Big Evs is up to. The really impressive 2-year-old last year now at 3. He's won some races this year as a sophomore overseas. I wonder what their plans might be in terms of maybe coming over. Maybe that's the one horse that we could look at as some challenge, because he's exceptional.
I heard that the plans were to come. So I haven't looked him up. I don't know when he last ran, but I think that the issue with him is nothing more than if he's healthy, he's going to be here. And apparently, last I read, I guess it must have been a few weeks back, and he was like, they think he's better than he was last year. So we'll see.
That's the showdown. That's what we're looking forward to, and that's why it's the Breeders' Cup World Championships, right? We want to see the best of the best match up. Let's go to our second topic this week, and it's 2-year-old time, right? I mean, we just passed Labor Day. We're getting into the fall. Del Mar and Saratoga just wrapped up their meet. And at Del Mar, we had the Del Mar Debutante and the Del Mar Futurity, of course, the closing weekend stakes races for the 2-year-old fillies on dirt and the 2-year-old colts. The end of the meet didn't turn out like the beginning of the meet, though. It seems to be a changing the guard, even though it's Baffert to Baffert handing the baton. Let's start talking first with the Del Mar Debutante, where now Tenma may be head of the division.
Popping out of it. They come for home. Vodka with a twist now has the lead. Tenma looms the danger down the center. Tenma is coming home fast. Vodka with a twist can't find any more. Tenma's catching her inch for inch. They come down to the wire, and Tenma has won it. Vodka with a twist was second, so there she was.
Disappointment there, Jeff, of course, was Nooney, who was so impressive in the first outing, but exposed here. Vodka with the twist is consistent for Phil D'Amato, I believe, is been to the East, been back to California and run well, but doesn't seem to be Vodka with a twist, a 2-turn Breeders' Cup kind of horse. Seems like a 1-turn animal to me. So is it Tenma, the head of the class now, as we head towards maybe the Chandelier and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies?
Yes, I mean, she got a 74 buyer number when she won this. She acts like a filly who run long. She's by Nyquist, out of him or by Tappet. I mean, she's good. Don't get me wrong. She's good. But the goosebump scale is a little light on her. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you don't have to force yourself to say that a horse is really, really good. I mean, it should come naturally. And I'm still questioning Tenma. I just don't know how much upside she's got. Now, we'll just wait and find out whether or not she runs again. I don't know whether she needs 3 races prior to the Breeders' Cup. I mean, they ran her back pretty quickly here, August 18th to September the 7th. She won. I mean, she got a grade 1. I mean, you're not going to turn that down. But whether or not they, I'm curious to see what Bob does with him, because if he runs her back in the Chandelier, that's telling me that he's not that high on her. I mean, like, get it as much as you can while you can get it. Whereas if he was thinking that she'd win the Breeders' Cup, he wouldn't even bother, wouldn't even worry about that. As for Nooney, I mean, when he ran her back in the previous race, this would be her third race, and the Breeders' Cup would have been her fourth. That tells me that he wasn't as high on her as maybe some of the others. That he's, again, get it while you can, because next year it'll be a whole different story. Some of the others in here are what they are. So I'm not overwhelmed with the California-based juvenile fillies. There have been years where I've thought they were terrific, but not this year. So I'm looking elsewhere as of right now. We'll see what transpires between now and Breeders' Cup Day.
Those 2-year-old fillies will get last calls, as we mentioned, in the Chandelier at Santa Anita already, the Alcibiades at Keeneland around 2 turns, and then the Frazetta 1-turn race at Belmont at Aqueduct. So 3 more big chances on dirt for the 2-year-old fillies before we get to Breeders' Cup time. Now, the other new kid on the block for the Baffert Barns, per se, was in the Del Mar Futurity. Baffert won the race for the 18th time, running essentially 1-2 in here, and Gaming is now the horse maybe of his that has moved to the head of the class.
Head for home, Getaway Kind, deep water down at the rail. Gaming has taken the lead. On the outside, Citizen Bull is in with a shot as well, and Mackenzie Street running a huge one. They are coming for home, and Gaming is the one to catch. He's finding more on the lead. Gaming and Flavion Pratt in front. Mackenzie Street chasing gamely, but Gaming has won the Del Mar Futurity in style. Second place went to Mackenzie Street, Citizen.
So the other Baffert, third in the totem pole, if you will, of wagering there at 7-2. It was a bit of a tell that Flavian Pratt, who probably could have ridden about 5 $2 million races this weekend at Kentucky Downs, was out for the mount to ride there. So what do we make of Gaming moving forward now, Jeff?
Well, this surprised me, honestly, and I'll tell you why. He's not a particularly great mover to begin with. He did win his first start, but he was only 2-1 in his debut for Baffert. There, if you're not 3-5 or less, they probably aren't that high, as highly regarded as you'd have thought. Now, his sire, freshman sire, game winner, good horse, hadn't done much prior to Gaming. The thing about Gaming, though, is after he broke his maiden by 5 lengths, and he earned a good number, but the 2 horses that he beat that were second and third in that race, they came back and ran in this very same race, and they were last and next to last. So he didn't. We know now that he didn't beat anybody in his maiden. He comes back, and it was Baffert did everybody a favor, I think. At least I think he intended to, by working Gaming in company with another first out maiden winner that ended up going favored in this race.
Right,
and that was. Citizen Bull.
Right.
So Citizen Bull got absolutely crushed on the tote. I mean, the way he had it badly outworked the winner here, Gaming, everybody was betting. He was the wise guy of wise guy horses. So even though Pratt took them out, all the money went to Citizen Bull, more so than the undefeated Getaway Car, who'd already won a stake in 2 races in a row. Long story short, I think Gaming ran in on him in this race. I really do. He won nicely, though. Maybe he's just not much of a worker. I don't know, because again, he probably would have been a shorter price in the maiden race, the debut maiden. But he looked good here, and the buyer number was pretty good. It was I think it was in the early 80s, low 80s or so. So he's okay. And being by game winner, he should run long. Again, I'm not sure if I'm convinced totally. But Getaway Car was another one of these horses that was get it while you can type of horse. Even though he's by Kerwin, kind of a sprinter-looking type of horse, I don't think Bob thought there was any classic potential there. And he was absolutely ice on the board despite being undefeated. I think he went off at like almost 4-1 and ran awful, made the lead and got run over. And then Mackenzie Street had some trouble. He's okay. He was a distant second. But I'm not convinced that Baffert or anybody else on the West Coast has the Breeders' Cup juvenile winner right now. I think the strength is in the East. I was impressed with the hopeful. I think there are others that will find that will run in Kentucky at Keeneland. Right now, I'm soft on this group, unless Gaming just proves to be better than I thought he was, and better than his connections with her. Baffert wasn't even there. He was a keen to looking at yearling. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it's the whole thing is, I don't know.
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of just eye-popping horses out of Del Mar this summer like we tend to see, and we'll find out how that translates to the Breeders' Cup. We'll get those long preps in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Division. We talked about the Juvenile Fillies races to come. Juvenile Division, of course, will have the American Pharoah going 2 turns at Santa Anita. You'll get a 2-turn race in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, and then there'll be the 1-turn Champagne run at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet. So still a chance to coalesce and create this 2-year-old division for sure amongst the dirt horses. We go to our third topic this week on It's Official, and we're going to stick with the 2-year-olds, but we're talking about the grass horses because it was a very busy week between Del Mar and Kentucky Downs, 4 major 2-year-old turf stakes races. Let's start off with Mayday Ready at Kentucky Downs. We're going to see how she maybe punched her ticket towards the Juvenile Fillies turf.
In 3/16 of a mile to run, Mayday Ready, and Frankie closing on the outside. Something about her is trying to put her in a run too. Bella Veneno is splitting horses. Here's Mayday Ready on the outside of She's Got Will and Mean Eileen, and Mayday Ready, and Frankie Dettori will do it. It's Bella Veneno up for second. She's Got Will third.
Jeff, of the 2-year-old fillies on turf we're going to look at, Mayday Ready was okay. I think the one at Del Mar is the one that we're going to get excited about, but your thoughts here before we look at the Del Mar winner.
Well, the buyer number of 65 is hardly impressive at all. I mean, so if you go by numbers, you can't get overwhelmed with Mayday Ready, but I mean, she's undefeated. She's by Tappet. Low profile connections, but I thought she quickened pretty nicely. But again, in looking at the number and looking at the field she beat, I mean, anytime you win a 12-runner field, you got to be somewhat impressed. But I don't know about her. I mean, she's got room to improve, and I think she will. But you're right. If you asked me who I would prefer, Mayday Ready or the filly that we saw out at Del Mar winning the equivalent, the Juvenile Fillies turf, I think both races are named the same. I think this one is Kentucky Downs and the other one is Del Mar. Right. I mean, couldn't they come up with some unique name for these races? You know?
They're anyway, for the Juvenile Fillies turf, so at least we don't have to think about the connections between the group. But I'll tell you, we talked about Thought Process, the filly who we're going to look at next out at Del Mar, going into this race and said she looks like the real deal. There was a lot of great just visual things to like about her previous victory, and this was no different. I thought she was really impressive. Del Mar Juvenile Fillies turf, circle the name Thought Process. She's going to be one to watch on that. Future Stars Friday at the Breeders' Cup.
They go, and Casalou still the leader, but now Thought Process hooks out, and Thought Process looms ominously alongside of Casalou. Casalou's not done, fighting right back. Thought Process up alongside. It's 3 back to Super Speed, battling on gamely in third. They're at the top of the lane, and Thought Process now strikes the front. Thought Process going well as they pass the 8th pole, and Thought Process out here moving like a winner. Thought Process will win the Del Mar Juvenile Fillies turf majestically. Second was Super Speed, running on late for third, Sea Runner.
When you get Trevor's signature moving like a winner, you know you're doing something right, and she is a good-looking mover, Jeff.
Well, that's the thing. I remember we talked about her last week, and I spoke of the fact that she looked like a filly who's only 2 years old but had run 25 times. I mean, she looked like she'd done this and was old, experienced for her actual age. Right. So when she secured that lovely second flight stalking trip, which I kind of projected that she would, and she collared the leader at the quarter pole, I mean, this race is over. And I think she actually got a little bored in the final furlong. She kind of drifted out a little bit, but just goofing off. It's not insignificant that the Breeders' Cup will be at Del Mar. We know she obviously likes this course now, 2 for 2 here. And with the tactical speed, the acceleration, numbers are rising. Beautifully bred for grass, being by Collected, who, by the way, only I think ran once on the grass, but he was by City Zip. So I told the story before. The only reason why I didn't run more on the grass is because he was too good on the dirt. Otherwise, he could have been even better on the turf. He never got a chance. So bred like she is, the action, the athleticism, the acceleration, the tactical speed. I mean, we're going to see some Euros here. We know that.
Mhm.
They better be good. That's
Mhm.
all I can say, because this filly is really good.
Still another round of preps to go in that 2-year-old filly division. They'll run the Jessamine at Keeneland. We've got the race in New York, the Miss Grillo that they have to run yet. And I believe the Zuma Beach is the race for the 2-year-old fillies at Santa Anita in the fall. So a couple more shots yet to see what we've got in this 2-year-old filly division. But right now, thought process looks awfully, awfully good. We continue our talk about the 2-year-old turfers next as we go to the Colts and Geldings here. Let's go back to Kentucky Downs. We've got Tiz-tastic getting the victory there in the Kentucky Downs Juvenile Mile.
As the field comes through the stretch, and then Tiz-tastic, who's rallying up quickly on the outside, right outside the front runners, and trying to make a run down toward the rail, is ready for peace. Tiz-tastic and West Beach now, these two. West Beach inside, Tiz-tastic on the outside, nose to nose down to the wire. West Beach, Tiz-tastic putting on a show right down to the finish. Tiz-tastic, too good.
Steve Asmussen had himself a good weekend at Kentucky Downs. Of course, we saw Cogburn already win the big turf sprint and head to the Breeders' Cup as the major favorite in the turf sprint division. How about Tiz-tastic? Maybe a horse for the Breeders' Cup turf mile, maybe turf sprint, the juvenile turf sprint. He's a nice one. Tiz the law of the sire there, and he's off to a really good start at stud.
You wouldn't think that he'd get a grass horse, though, but
yeah,
Tiz-tastic is obviously good. He won his previous race, a maiden race, sprinting. Didn't run particularly fast in that race at Kentucky Downs. My impression of Tiz-tastic is he strikes me as more of a New York horse than a Del Mar horse. And I'll tell you why. He's a kind of a tall, angular colt. Doesn't have quick action at all. He's kind of a lumbering colt, with a long stride. And I wonder whether or not his style of running, his action, will translate well to the tight Del Mar turf course, where you need to really be able to accelerate, because in a big field, those holes that you might find, they're not going to stay open for very long. If it opens up, you better be able to accelerate. And he doesn't have that kind of action. I think I think he's a good horse. The number was good. He ran fast, all that. I just don't know whether he'll be happy at Del Mar on that tight bull ring type of turf course they have. But it's a good race. West Beach coming down from Saratoga ran well. Again, you have to wonder who's in this field. You just don't know. But I think we'll see what Asmussen does, how ambitious he wants to get with this colt, and whether or not he'll have another run prior to the Breeders' Cup, which I assume he'll be in, regardless of whether I think he belongs there or not.
Yeah, you'll have some options there. Now, we've had a race on the West Coast as well last weekend for the 2-year-old colts. Not as impressive as the filly that we saw earlier, but the Del Mar Juvenile Turf run with a really nice trip up the fence by Artesius.
Goes on, Mischief River, but a wall of horses coming after him now. Artesius at the rail. Artesius gets a dream run down there and comes up to get the lead. Artesius in front, Mischief River battling on. Late run from Encore Doob down at the rail, and Sabertooth flying. Sabertooth flying at the inside. Artesius just kept off Sabertooth in the second spot.
That was like a turf sprint type finish with everybody on the wire together. Jeff, they usually say if you can throw a net over everybody at the finish line, it probably wasn't that good of a race. And looking at the number that came back on this one, the 68 buyer here, not a big speed figure advocate, but this race visually looked like it's just a lot of horses out there, not necessarily any stars.
It's true that they all finished in a heap like this. And if the race had been 7.5 furlongs, would have had a different winner. If the race was 1 mile and 70 yards, we would have had a different winner. But the wire comes up right for a horse named Artislas, not Artesius. That's an L, not an I. I know sometimes it's tough to read on the lower case, but his name is Artislas. But and he's all right. He won his previous start, but I mean the rest of these. I mean, the maidens ran second and third. What do you know? I mean, they're just horses they threw in the race. Mischief River was a dirt sprinter. I didn't think he would necessarily be good. The favorite turned out to be a filly who had won once back in July 27th, about a little over a month before this, at Gowran Park in Ireland in a maiden race. She's the favorite. And the reason why she was the favorite is because everybody went through the whole list of, I don't like him, I don't like him, I don't like him. I don't know her, so I'll pick her, right? Yeah. So that's how it is. But There may be a really good grass horse out there in California. I haven't seen it, which is why this was a grass grab bag, as I say, and the number and the proximity of the horses to each other in the final furlong tells me that there's got to be some Euros over there that could beat this group.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we've still got another round of preps to go. The Bourbon at Keeneland usually produces a horse or two for this race, but this feels like a European race. And historically, the 2-year-old juvenile turf is a race where the Europeans have had a very, very strong hand to play and a lot of success. I mean, this is their division. The juvenile fillies turf, the Americans have done very well for themselves. Juvenile fillies colts, are the juvenile turf for the colts has been a European game mostly throughout the course of its history. So let's continue this week as we go from the 2-year-olds on the turf to some older mares on the grass. And look, we weren't really excited about some of those recent few races that we just saw on the program. We're not going to get excited about these either. There was a race run out in California, the John C. Maybe over the past weekend, where we thought, Didia's in there. You've got Anisette. And it's Hang the Moon who ends up getting the victory. And maybe we're not so impressed with this division either right now.
And here's Anisette at the rail. Does she find room? Anisette full of run. Got a beautiful gap now. And Anisette bursts through down the inside. Didier is coming home gamely on the outside. 1/8 of a mile to go. Anisette the one to catch. Didier closing strongly as Lucky Girl. Also coming late out here is Hang the Moon. Hang the Moon's going to get up. Hang the Moon, Lucky Girl, Anisette, weakened late, finished a close third, and then Didier.
Well, Jeff, we're talking about a Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf division that's going to stretch out to a 1 3/8 this year. Do you see a 1 3/8 horse there that could hang with the Euros?
I see 1 3/8 horse here, but I don't think any of them can hang with the Euros. So, I mean, I did the morning line for this race, obviously for Del Mar, and I had the winner 20-1, runner-up 15-1, and that's a 7-horse race. I'm not talking about, and they ran completely the opposite that I thought. I wasn't, Didier can run really good, and sometimes she throws in a clunker. But Anisette was the one that I was concerned about, and she got a dream run here, saved ground every step of the way, hit the front, got run over. She's made, she's a good filly, but she's made no progress. And now she's starting to slip back a little bit because while Anisette was earning Byron numbers in the low 90s consistently, the winner earned an 85 here. And I have no quarrel with the number because the pace was normal. I mean, if they're going to run fast, they're going to run fast. They didn't run fast. So basically what happened here is the best fillies in the field ran down to the 20-1 winners level, who had never won a stakes, never placed in a graded stakes, was placed on 2 listed stakes races in the entire career. That's all. I don't know if she improved. I don't think she did. I think everybody else it was just a blah race, And then you look at what might show up from the East, and I thought Didier would be a layover here. And had she shown up with her A game, she would have been, but she didn't. So that's a bit of caution for those who are looking to back a shipper at Del Mar on the grass course. Sometimes they don't fire, and it's kind of a messy race sometimes on this course. But again, I'll be looking elsewhere when the fields are starting to come together for sure, and we learn who's coming over from Europe.
The Filly Mare Turf Division last week also had a race at Kentucky Downs, the Ladies Marathon. That was won by the Park Space Butch Reed trainee, Nisi Marie. She ran probably the best race of her life. She'd been kind of knocking on the door in some of the bigger races, the Beverly D, the New York, but Nisi Marie in the Kentucky Downs Ladies Marathon finished with some flair.
And into the final furlong, Forever After All is trying to put in a bid with Nisi Marie down the center of the course. 3/16 of a mile run, Nisi Marie. Nisi Marie with a surge on the far outside. Moves alongside of Vergara, and now it's Nisi Marie to the front. Vergara left behind in second. As they come to the wire, Nisi Marie looking good. She won it by 2.5 or 3 in the end.
You question sometimes when a horse finally puts it all together at Kentucky Downs if it wasn't the course, right? And that's the kind of horse that might come back next year and win another race similar to that and just be a horse for course for Kentucky Downs. But in a division where there's just no hammerhead for Chad Brown this year, right? We're not looking at a Sister Charlie or somebody like that in the division. it's open for the taking, and it's probably open for the Europeans. Let's take a look back to the oddschecker.com odds for this Philly AmeriTurf division, because you said a case of the Bloss. Here are the prices being offered right now on futures bets overseas amongst the top Europeans. It's the 3-year-old filly for Aidan O'Brien, the Yorkshire Oaks winner, Content at 5-1. Blue Stocking is the second favorite right now in this division. Of course, Blue Stocking is a horse for Ralph Beckett, won the Pretty Polly, and was taking on the boys recently and ran 4th in the Juddmonte International, so plenty of class there. Opera Singer's the older horse amongst the Aidan O'Brien potential trainees, winner of the Group 1 Nassau. She's 4. Content, of course, the 3-year-old. You go down that list of the Europeans, and Spiral offered in at 12, Jeff, but we don't expect to see her, do we?
No, I don't think so. She won it last year going 1.25 miles at Santa Anita. But 1 3/8 is not her trip, I don't think. And also, she's coming off a Group 1 win, a really impressive Group 1 win in France. So that was a sprint. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to take her and run her 1 3/8. She's finishing off her final career. I was surprised she actually ran this year. But I think they're looking at maybe the English champion race, whatever they call it there. She's also developing a very disturbing habit of standing in the gate at the start. She just will not come out. She's motivated only by proving how much the best she can be by standing there and spotting the field 8 or 9 things, which she did last time. I don't think she can get away with it that here going 1 mile and 3/8. So I think we've seen the last of Inspiral, but the good news is we got to see her last year and what a race she performed. But there are a lot of horses over there that might just catch a flight thinking, I don't know. I mean, this is a wide open race and the Americans don't inspire me. So maybe we'll come. So that's why you really have to wait and see how it shakes out.
Yeah, 1 mile and 3/8 is a distance farther than most of the American turf mares are asked to go and want to go. Chad Brown's already kind of thrown the smoke screen up, talking about how he doesn't like the 1 mile and 3/8. And Chad Brown is the Philly AmeriTurf division in the United States a lot of years. So if he doesn't have anything that he's really eager to run 1 mile and 3/8, he'll run something. Don't get me wrong, but they may not be as strong going the 1 mile and 3/8. This division does look wide open for the taking. One of those Europeans could be an absolute heavy favorite, or maybe something from Japan. Remember the last time the Breeders' Cup was at Del Mar, Japan was awfully good in these kind of filly, mare, and distaff type races as well. So look out for Japan maybe in the Philly AmeriTurf division this year. It's a case of the Bloss from what we've seen recently, though, from the U.S. horses in the Philly AmeriTurf division. Now, look, we stop with all of the Bloss and all of the I'm not impressed this week's, because there was an impressive performance, and we finish up our show with the Stars of Tomorrow segment. This is a 2-year-old to watch moving forward. A lot of times it's a horse coming off a maiden race. This is a horse coming off a stakes win, but it's not a stakes that a lot of people were following necessarily last weekend. It was the opening leg of the Florida Sire Stakes Series, the Dr. Feger in Gulfstream Park. And this Florida bred, rated by Merit, can flat out scoot.
Rio's handling through a 44-4 opening half mile. He wheels for home, asked to finish the job, and he opens up by 3 now. There's an 1/8 of a mile to go, but Rated by Merit has bid this field a pleasant Saturday good afternoon. It's Rated by Merit, out to prove his maiden win was no fluke. He is indeed the real deal and a 5-length winner.
Now, they'll stretch out a little bit in the next leg of the Florida Sire Stakes Series. They'll go even longer after that. But is this a Breeders' Cup type horse? We're going to find out. Mike Yates, the trainer for Vincent and Teresa Viola. You saw those familiar green silks there of the Viola St. Elias stable, of course. I mean, Yates isn't necessarily a trainer to take one straight to the big time, but the Violas do play at the big level. And will we see Rated by Merit as a potential Breeders' Cup horse? Right now, he's the fastest 2-year-old in the country, I think.
He on numbers, I think he is. I think he earned a 92 or a 93 buyer number. He'd also earned, I think, a 90 buyer or something like that.
92 in the debut, yeah.
Right. So there you have Rated by Merit, a son of a battalion runner. If you've never heard of him, I didn't either, but I looked him up. He was a pretty fast horse. Yeah. Didn't last very long, as is the norm for Unbridled Song. But you could see why he could get a fast horse, and this is a very fast horse, who, by the way, doesn't necessarily need the lead. You could sit behind him. He looks like an ideal one-corner horse, 6.5, 7, maybe a one-turn mile. He did not change his leads in his debut. He was very late changing leads here. I wouldn't want to throw too much at him, if you know what I mean. I mean, he's a Florida bred. There's nobody who can touch him there.
Right.
So why don't you just win as much as you can and then get creative when you can't do that anymore? But I wouldn't think that he would be going after any bigger fish than he's seeing right now. And yet he's going to be a star in his region. I mean, he's going to be a Florida bred who's going to clean up, and people are going to like him and follow him a lot down there. So on that level alone, I think he's a future star, and he's obviously a very, very good fast colt.
All right. That is Rated by Merit, our star of tomorrow. Let's take a look at our topics this week on It's Official. The fastest horse in the world. Yes, I think it could be Cogburn. We'll see. Hopefully he gets that showdown with Mulligan in the Breeders' Cup, or Mulligan's in the sprint. But, that would be the other horse that maybe people would consider right now as the potential fastest horse in America on the dirt. Cogburn, maybe the fastest horse in the world on turf. The new kids on the block were the Baffert horses that rose up and took the final 2 stakes races of the meet at Del Mar on the dirt. Gaming winner of the Del Mar Futurity, the Del Mar Debutante, went to Tenma. Neither one of those expected to be the tops of the Baffert going into the event. Our 2-year-old turfer search around the country. We looked at 4 stakes races where Thought Process, the 2-year-old filly out at Del Mar for Phil D'Amato, was certainly the star of the quartet of the 2-year-olds we saw on grass last weekend. Case of the Blas, we're not that wound up about the filly and mare turf division right now. We looked at the win in the in the John C. Maybe that kind of didn't give us any great vibes with horses like Diddy and Anisette moving forward as they were upset by the 20-1 shot Hang the Moon. And finally, our star of tomorrow is Rated by Merit. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play the game. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, big week in racing coming up. Woodbine Mile on Saturday. We're changing the guards in Kentucky with racing going to Churchill Downs. In New York, where Belmont at Aqueduct opens up a little bit later this week. And also Los Alamitos will be the scene shifter for a couple weeks on the Southern California scene. Also, Jeff, there was a change to announce. I think you're going to be somewhat happy about this, but I don't know if it's going to change the overall outcome of things. The undercard races for the Breeders' Cup were announced officially. A press release went out this morning. And the longtime marathon race, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance Stakes, is no more. There's still a TAA Stakes, but that's been changed to become a 2-year-old turf mile. There's no long-distance dirt marathon left on the Breeders' Cup undercard. Could that mean your boy is headed to the Breeders' Cup?
My boy, I think, I mean, I don't know whether they know that or found that out, but the Breeders' Cup is definitely in the works for next. Now he still has to run third week of September in a walkover that is called the
Greenwood Cup. Yeah,
the Greenwood. Okay, nice little 1.5 mile, 2-minute lick gallop for him.
Yeah.
The question though is, okay, now the trainer who has already said no, Breeders' Cup is definitely on the table, but we don't know which race he's going to run in. Mm-hmm. I think what he's going to do is going to call up Jeremy Plonk. So, Jeremy, I need some help here. Which race would you run next in?
Classic,
if you had him, because I need help. I need some help here. What would you do?
Look, if the favorites for the Breeders' Cup Classic are going to be horses from Europe and Japan, then I think you got to run in the Classic. And, he'd certainly be just fine in 1.25 miles, as strong as he's been in the longer races. So I would love to see next in the Classic. There was always that option, like in recent years, he ran on the undercard in the marathon. There is no marathon anymore, and that's kind of a little bit of the news of the day. The TAA Stakes will be run at Del Mar as a 2-year-old turf mile as part of the undercard on Friday of Breeders' Cup. Coming up.
Let me ask you a question here. Do you think the existence of Next had anything to do with them canceling that race? Number one,
that I don't know. I don't have any inside info, and I probably should have looked into that.
Well, they wouldn't admit it, but I mean,
true. It might have. It might have.
I mean, they don't want to have any kind of minus pool or whatever, on the betting in California here for that.
Yeah, and you don't want any race that dissuades handle, right? I mean, if you've got a horse who's 1-5 in a short field,
I mean, they don't need him for that race. They need him for the big story. Because can
Yeah.
you imagine a classic with City of Troy and
Yeah.
Fierceness and Next?
Now we got
And
something.
I
Yeah.
mean, now that's
The
that. I mean,
Dermasotogakis and the
right.
Forever Youngs. Yeah, now all of a sudden we've got something. That's what I kind of like. I think the dirt mile kind of hurt. Like, it pulled horses out of the sprint and it pulled horses out of the classic. Well, the old classic, I just kind of like that because sometimes you got a horse who was a little bit shorter, but would try to go long. It was like a clash, there weren't as many places to run on Breeders' Cup days there are now, right? It used to be 7 divisions. Now, obviously, it's 13, 14. So it's different in that respect. It waters down some of the divisions. I love seeing that intrigue where they all kind of clash and mesh over. And if that means bringing a horse out of a particular division, I'd love for somebody sometime to take like a great turf horse and see if you could win the Breeders' Cup Classic with them, in America, just say, look, I'm going to try to be an all-timer here. Like, I'm going to try to be John Henry again. Nobody tries to do that anymore.
Right.
But it'd be kind of cool to see. But we might get that with the European turf horses trying the dirt, with the international influence, with the marathoner. We might get that 3-year-old taking on the elders. We get some intrigue, right? A lot of ingredients in the soup that could be there for this year's Breeders' Cup Classic. Can't wait for it again, coming up November 1st and 2nd at Del Mar. It seems like, guys, come on. We just passed Labor Day. Why are you talking about these races November 1st and 2nd? Because they basically have their preps done in a lot of cases with these horses and one more prep to go. So we're right there. We're on the doorstep of the Breeders' Cup. We'll be talking about it over the next couple months. And as we get closer to it, we'll change our topics from talking about the preps for it to how the horses are training, how you want to attack it, how you want to bet it, and all that. So be sure to stick with us here. Your place for everything here at First Bet and Express Bet, our podcast on Tuesday. It's official. And then our First Call podcast every Friday where we'll do handicapping. This Friday, I'm sure we're going to be handicapping a lot about the Woodbine Mile card and the big weekends around the country. I do want to finish with some sad news. Folks on Twitter obviously have seen and throughout some racing press, but fellow podcaster and one of our contemporaries, Chuck Simon, passed away at the age of 57 in Saratoga Springs over the weekend. He was a former trainer, learned the game under great trainers like Alan Jerkins, Nick Zito, went out on his own, trained some good horses like Battle One before getting out of the training game. And in the last, 6, 8, 10 years, he's been a rather popular face on Twitter and voice in racing, advocating for good things in the sport. And Chuck was a good guy. Not a personal friend of mine, but somebody that we communicated with a lot on social media, and somebody whose opinion I really respected. We're going to miss his opinion, and sad to see. I know a lot of people rallied around Chuck with a GoFundMe account, and we promoted that here on the podcast a couple months back. But cancer's a bitch, and it's a shame, that Chuck put up the good fight and succumbed to it at the age of 57 this weekend. So dedicate this podcast to Chuck Simon. We got to all stick together in this game, and our hearts go out to people who were friends with Chuck and are certainly his family. John.
Well said.
We'll
I didn't know him. I didn't know him, but I knew of him. And it's gotten to a point in my life where I'm losing people like every other week, and that's kind of scary. But I'm hanging in there.
Let's all hang together here, stick together. We'll be back on Friday, and we'll do it all again when we reconvene for the First Call podcast. Take care, everyone.